Hey, this is Level Jake. Thank you for tuning in once more to my Quest 64 comprehensive study. Just a quick disclaimer before you watch this video. If you haven't already, I highly suggest watching at least the in-depth lore analysis video as well as the Keltland revealed video. A lot of the parts in those videos have to do with important parts in this video, so I definitely suggest you watch that first. If you already have, you're all set to go. Thank you and enjoy the video. To organically navigate through all the moving parts of Quest's story, I've separated Brian's journey in chapters. This not only helped guide my hand in writing since the plot is erratic in its telling, but also serves as a pace setter. There are 7 chapters in total to explore, and even if you're familiar with one area, I'd advise not to skip ahead, as some sections contain information that feed into other chapters. Before we begin, however, let's quickly re-establish some ground to better understand the framework of the story. Keltland, a land of magic and monsters, is currently divided between the 3 kingdoms of Kenishire, Carmaw, and Highland. We'll begin our quest at the Melroad Monastery, in the northernmost kingdom of Kenishire, ruled by the noble King Scotfort. The Melroad Monastery is home to the playable character and protagonist Brian, along with his father and tutor, Lord Bartholomew. Brian is a young and talented apprentice spirit tamer, a type of spellcaster that gains mastery in the 4 elements through rigorous training and pacts with elemental spirits. The most important duty of the spirit tamers is to safeguard the Eltale book, a dangerous ancient artifact locked deep within the monastery's crypts. The origin for the Eltale book's containment is from the disaster it caused 1,000 years ago, known as the Day of Grief. Sorcerer King Levar intended to use the book to dominate the warring factions of Keltland, but unknowingly released an evil that warped him and caused devastation across the land. Only by the power of the 4 great elemental spirits and the spirit tamer Epona combined was it possible to defeat Levar and fragment the book's power into the 4 elemental gems. These gems were vessels created by the Great Spirit sacrificing portions of their power to fragment and vessel the book's strength. Once the ritual was completed, the gems were given and passed down to worthy protectors as an additional measure to safeguard the realm and keep the power of the Eltale book in check. Since then, a relative peace has remained over Keltland. One night, however, a spell is cast over the monastery, which allowed an unknown robber to steal the Eltale book and vanish without a trace. It's impossible to say currently who could have stolen the book, as they would have had to have been an extremely powerful spellcaster and have knowledge of where the book was hidden. The Eltale book in the wrong hands could cause great devastation across Keltland, and Lord Bartholomew departs the monastery to search for the book and its thief, leaving his young son behind. Brian waits despite his concerns, placated by the Grand Abbot to remain. Our story itself begins soon thereafter. It's been over a month since Lord Bartholomew sent a letter updating the status of his mission, and is now considered missing in action. Brian refuses to stand idle while his father could be in danger, and despite the abbot's pleas, embarks on his quest to search for Lord Bartholomew. Before leaving, the abbot offers a piece of advice. He's written to King Scotfort to offer any assistance he can to the young Brian, and that he should begin his search for his father at the king's castle town of Dondren. After this conversation with the abbot, our journey begins. In Chapter 1, we'll explore Kenishire's province of the Holy Plains in full, from Melroad to Dondren and the bordering Connor Forest. We'll be introduced to our first recurring support character, the Traveler Shannon, along with the minor character King Scotfort and his daughter Princess Flora. Overall, the chapter can be broken up into 3 major areas, these being our departure of Melroad, meeting with King Scotfort at Dondren Castle, and the confrontation with our first major villain in Connor Forest. Taking the Grand Abbot's words to heed, we're going to set off towards Dondren to meet with the king. If you speak with Marmaduke at the monastery's entrance before leaving, however, you'll learn that Lord Bartholomew's last letter was written as he was crossing the Loch Kildery toward Larapool. Taking this at face value, we can assume that he exhausted his search in Kenishire for the Eltale book's thief, and saw fit to investigate the neighboring country of Carmaw. This is an important detail to keep in mind as we descend the mountain pass into the village of Melroad. First, if you stop by the Melroad Inn, you'll have the opportunity to meet Quest's first major supporting character, Shannon. She explains that she's traveling all over Keltland and that she expects she'll meet with you again. Shannon will be available to speak with at every major inn throughout the game and will typically offer a word of advice or context for the story, which makes her a valuable source of information throughout the game. While she offers little of import for now, it's important to establish her as we string together her future events. Leaving the inn and speaking with Melroad's villagers will pick up on some gossip that's been circulating. Since Lord Bartholomew's departure, nearby monsters have grown bolder, encroaching upon the main roads and the village itself. Some have taken up arms and organized a town watch, but this does little to ease the tension, as there's still hope your father will return soon to resume his duties protecting Melroad. Following this, we'll also learn of a rumor that a robber settled within the nearby Connor Forest. It's possible this could be the same thief that stole the Eltale book, but if so, why did our father abandon his search in Kenishire? Could he have been outfoxed by the thief and led into a false trail? But even if that were the case, what danger could Lord Bartholomew have encountered in Carmaw that's kept him from updating the monastery of his task? With these questions in mind, we'll take our first steps outside of Melroad and into the world of Keltland. The Holy Plains main road directly connects Dondarin to Melroad, and there is little worth stopping for outside of a fortune teller's hut during the journey. The teller Marion gives the player a bit of allegory on Brian's quest, foreseeing that what Brian seeks can be found at the end of the longest road. A short while after this, we'll arrive at the towering Dondarin walls and make our way inside the city to hunt for clues and speak with King Scottfort. It doesn't take long to learn that Dondarin is in the middle of an economic crisis. Many of the townsfolk are concerned of the robber who made himself at home in the Connor Forest right outside the city. Ever since he took to the woods, it's become too dangerous for the clay diggers to resume their excavations in the forest, putting a halt to the city's importation of clay. This directly affects the potters and artisans of the city who face potential business closures without being supplied with the resources they need for their work. If that wasn't enough, the gate that allows access between the Holy Plains and the Dondarin Flats has been temporarily closed, which has kept many merchants and travelers in limbo, Shannon included. The mood within Dondarin Castle isn't much better. Speaking with King Scottfort, he'll explain that he's unable to assist Brian with finding his father until his people are safe once more. The disaster began when the thief snuck into the castle and stole the kingdom's precious earth orb, then fleeing towards the Connor Forest. Scottfort sent his knights in chase but were overwhelmed and routed due to the thief's overwhelming dark magic. Additionally, the attack occurred recently, leaving many of Dondarin's knights demoralized, some of which are still nursing their wounds. While inside the castle, we can speak with Princess Nina, who is equally frustrated with the situation, made worse that her father forbade her from leaving the castle to pursue the thief due to the danger. Thanks to the chaos, it falls squarely on Brian's lap to take charge of the situation and confront the mysterious thief. We can't set out for the Dondarin Flats with the border closed, and there's still a chance that the thief that attacked Dondarin could be the same one that attacked the monastery. So it only works in our best interest to restore order to Kenishire and return the Earth Orb to King Scottfort. That said, we'll set out for Connor Forest to find our answers and confront the dangers within. Upon entry, the road within Connor Forest forks into opposite directions. One will take you to the sealed border, while the other takes you deeper into the woods. Eventually, you'll come across two great iron gates which lead inside an abandoned stronghold, doubtless used long ago when the kingdoms warred with one another, but since abandoned thanks to the peace treaty maintained. It's inside this stronghold that we'll find the man responsible for what's befallen Dondarin, the Beast King Solvering. Solvering explains that he stole the Earth Orb from the foolish King Scottfort and means to show humans what real power is once he's conquered Kenishire for himself. After this short dialogue, he immediately becomes hostile and the battle begins. Should Brian triumph, Solvering will drop the Earth Orb, but there will be no sign of the Eltale book in his possession or within the stronghold. This clears Solvering of any immediate involvement with the book's theft, but at least Dondrin is now free of the bedlam Solvering caused. Before we head to the next area though, we'll travel back to Dondrin and return the Earth Orb to the king. The townsfolk are beyond relieved that Connor Forest is safe once more, and King Scottfort is overjoyed that the Earth Orb is in safe hands. He'll congratulate us and ask that we keep the orb as he expects it will assist us on our quest. Princess Flora and Shannon will similarly offer Brian praise, both being surprised by Brian's great skill to overcome the kingdom's conflict. With the Earth Orb safely in our possession, Dondrin saved, and the border open once more, we can forge ahead to Chapter 2. A quick note, however. Towards the end of the video, I'll be going over in more detail the influence the elemental gems have, as well as what our first villain's motivations might be. Discussing them together towards the end of this will create a more structured analysis, so while Solvering has been defeated, we're far from finished discussing him. Chapter 2's narrative is a bit more cumbersome and less direct than our first chapter because it's spread across two counties, the Dondrin Flats and West Carmaw. I'll briefly explain the limited purpose the Dondrin Flats serve, as the area is largely pointless and this chapter is already filled to bursting with content. The bulk of the chapter instead takes place in West Carmaw, where we'll meet with our two new recurring characters, Lila and Leonardo of Larpool and Normoon respectively. Chapter 2 and Chapter 1 are similar, however, in that most of the action revolves around another elemental gem being stolen, followed by a resolution upon its retrieval. To begin, once Brian passes through the Connor Forest checkpoint, nothing will bar him from heading due south to the Dondrin dock to board the ferry towards West Carmaw, in his father's footsteps. There's the Glencoe Forest to the west, but it serves literally no practical purpose in the overarching story, and instead functions as an optional area for the player to grind and find additional spirits. There's a witch that lives within the woods that explains a nearby cave entrance will open to Brian should he earn the blessings of the spirits, but another entrance to the same cave opens later in the game that's tied directly to the story, so we'll just opt for that instead. With that out of the way, heading directly south and boarding the ferry, we'll finally sail from Kenishire and into the neighboring country of Carmaw. Upon landing, the captain will explain that he'll be docked in West Carmaw for some time, as the wind and water are behaving bizarrely, disallowing safe travel to the ferry's next location. It looks like we'll be temporarily stuck in a county once more, so for now we'll take the opportunity to explore as much as we can. Checking the map, there are two major settlements, Larpool and Normoon, and since Larpool is closest and where our father originally was headed to in his last message, we'll begin our investigation there. Entering Larpool, the citizens are fully aware that it's dangerous to travel, but if they stay within the city, they're safe. The reason for this that we'll come to find is on the second floor of the inn by a woman named Lila, a sorceress and who we come to know as the embodiment of the water spirit. She explains that it's her destiny to protect the City of Water, but that the magic wind that keeps the monsters at bay have ceased blowing, endangering all people of West Carmaw. She's using all the power she can muster to continue to defend Larpool, but beseeches Brian to assist her and confront the cause of the absentee wind. Luckily for us, Shannon is downstairs in the inn's lobby to offer additional insight and clues, and upon speaking with her, she claims that our fortune may lay within Normoon, the City of Wind to the south. Lila can protect Larpool with her magic, but there's no indication that Normoon has provided any sort of protection from monsters. Could it be that our father set out to Normoon to help protect the village? We've got nothing to lose, so we'll head to the south to find more answers. The easiest way to travel to Normoon is to head south and cross a bridge that feeds into the Windward Forest, but when we arrive, we'll learn that the bridge is under repair. The twin brothers who maintain the bridge explain that a wizard with control over the wind is the likely culprit behind the bridge's damage, and that the only way to Normoon now is through the Coal Hazard, a long and dangerous series of tunnels. The journey will be much longer, but with Coal Hazard as our only option left, we'll enter the cave and brave the dangers within as our quest continues. Coal Hazard is, like quest forests or other dungeons, largely uneventful, and so long as Brian has grown powerful enough to make his way through, nothing will keep him from reaching the end and entering the backside of Normoon. I'm convinced it originally served a larger purpose in the story, seeing as there's a dead end where a large root erupts from the earth and carries Brian across the rest of the cave, but there is no event or noteworthy NPC that explains its origin. Regardless, once we make our way out of the Coal Hazard and into Normoon Village, we're finally able to begin searching for clues regarding the wind, and perhaps the sorcerer who damaged the bridge. Meandering about the village are three vagabonds, Rick, Oscar, and Kevin, who are searching for their missing fourth companion. Rick is more annoyed than concerned over the missing fourth member, while Oscar and Kevin provide some valuable information on the situation. Oscar recounts that while they were traveling through the Windward Forest, they came across a strange gem, and the one carrying it while the group stayed at the inn vanished soon after. Kevin believes their companion is deep within the forest, and hovers about the entrance as if expecting him to return. After speaking with the vagabonds, there are a few areas of information left to gather. The retired druids of the village have the most straightforward concerns, for without the protection of the magic wind, Normoon is completely defenseless against nearby monsters. Checking into the inn, we'll meet up with Shannon, who mentions that she too has heard of a powerful gem hidden nearby, and that a lone wizard was seen wandering through the Windward Forest. Finally, on the second floor, we'll have the opportunity to speak with our second new recurring character, Leonardo. He's a magician and a month ago met with Lord Bartholomew, who he refers to as Old Bart, while the latter was preparing to leave for Limeland. He also claims that he's searching for something known as the Alchemist's Secret, but I'll go ahead and divulge now that its origin and purpose is never referenced again in Quest, and I have no theories on what it could possibly be. This is a lot to take in at once, so let's quickly break down what we've learned. With Leonardo's information, we've picked up Lord Bartholomew's new trail toward Limeland. In addition, thanks to Kevin, Oscar, and the Bridge Keepers, it's likely that the man behind the bridge's destruction is within the Windward Forest, and if we move quickly, we should be able to confront him. Finally, there's a connection between the gem that was found and the sorcerer who went missing. With any luck, all these clues will take us to what's responsible for the missing wind. Stepping within the Windward Forest, we'll begin searching for signs of the vagabond's absent associate. It isn't until we've nearly exhausted our search at the border of the forest edge where we'll finally encounter the sorcerer Zels. He's extremely aggressive, shouting for Brian to get out of the way as all those who belittled his power will be blown to smithereens. His power has been amplified by use of the Wind Jade's dark magic, granting him immense magical strength, like Solvering by way of the Earth Orb. However, should Brian triumph, we'll be able to take the Wind Jade into our possession and protection. We'll learn shortly thereafter the magic wind returned to West Karma, now that the Wind Jade is dormant once more. When the gem was used, this caused the elemental balance of Keltland to shift, which caused the absence of the wind. It's safe to say that it's at least possible the raging waters of the Loch Kildare are being caused by the misuse of another gem. If that's the case, we need to return to Lila quickly and find out if she knows anything more. With the Windjade's power returned to dormancy, the encroaching monsters are kept at bay from Normoon and Larpool, and life returns to normal for most of the region. Upon hearing the news of their companion's demise, however, the vagabonds express disappointment in Zels's actions, but also surprised that he would do, let alone be capable of, such treachery. Even Rick, who conveyed little care for Zels's well-being, ponders that someone might have put him up to the evil deed. This marks the end of Chapter 2 and will take us directly into Chapter 3 in the next video, where we return to Lila with news of our victory. Before I end this section, however, this is an excellent time to examine Zels's motives, which upon closer examination may correlate to Solvering's and some of our future villains as well. First, Zels informs us quite candidly that his wrath is targeted towards those who belittled his power. To investigate this, I believe we only need look as far as those he was traveling with to get an idea for who could have been belittling him. I believe in some way it's possible Zels was looked down upon, or even bullied by his companions for his magic profession. Rick, Oscar, and Kevin are all hardy, powerful-looking people with no apparent skill or knowledge of magic. We know that Rick was more annoyed at the inconvenience Zels caused with his absence than concerned, going so far as to call him a knave for having left Normoon. It's difficult to say how close Zels was to his friends in general, though it doesn't help that Kevin and Oscar didn't make any real attempts at pursuing their friend, satisfied in waiting for his return. Even if we take out the factor that Zels was ostracized for his magic, it's possible that his spellcasting capabilities were mediocre at best. He explicitly states that his power has been belittled, and perhaps the additional power granted by the elemental gem was exactly what he needed to prove himself. So, we should consider what this theory could ultimately mean. Take a wizard, who may have had little talent for magic, couple him with those who would ostracize him for his magical ability, and care so little that they don't bother to search for him when he disappears. It's not perfect, but I believe that over time, the world that never gave Zels a chance finally broke him. Upon finding the Wind Jade, he uses its power to bolster his own, to finally show everyone that he is strong, that he does have worth, and that he isn't one to be belittled. I also have a theory that could explain the violent, aggressive tendencies the wielder of an elemental gem experiences. I've explained that the gems contain fragments of the Eltale book's power, and we need only to look at Lavar during the Day of Grief to understand how the book could turn anyone, no matter how powerful, into a bloodthirsty monster. Now we've personally seen on 2 occasions that while one can use the gem to enhance their magical ability, it will still affect the user's mind in some way, just not to the degree the Eltale book could before its power was sectioned off. In addition, we know now that the tremendous power bestowed upon a gem wielder throws the balance of the elements out of whack, and creates dangerous conditions across the land. Naturally, these conditions return to normal once they're in Brian's possession. He's simply carrying them and protecting them and doesn't ever use them himself. While we didn't see this effect with Solvering, it could have only been a matter of time before the ill effects of the gem were felt across the Holy Plains or all Kenishire. It could even be argued that Solvering's use of the Earth Orb caused powerful beasts and demons to appear in Connor Forest, as it had previously been an area safe for the Dondran diggers to excavate clay. Solvering's animosity specifically targeted at King Scottfort and Kenishire is perhaps because he once considered himself the ruler of Connor Forest, being the self-proclaimed King of Beasts, and once King Scottfort began harvesting the forest of its natural resources, he was forced to watch as his home was stripped away from him, powerless to stop the king and his knights. Most of this is speculation, since Quest's story isn't completely fleshed out, but I find that it's the most reasonable explanation that provides important closure for the characters. The reason I gravitated towards these motivations is because it finally makes these characters human. They're not evil, they're just desperate, and were easy targets for the influence of the elemental gems. Solvering wanted to become King of Kenishire, perhaps to keep his home safe, or at the least keep Dondran out of it, and Zels wanted to prove a world that never gave him a chance that he was worth something. All this leads up to one indispensable point. How did they know the gems could grant them the power they needed? They've been protected for at least 1,000 years, and even if someone is spreading this information to those vulnerable to the gem's influence, who could possibly know the gems had the capacity to do such a thing? We still aren't any closer to finding Lord Bartholomew either. Is it possible he knows something we don't? Could all this be the work of the Eltale book's thief? There's a lot more to uncover throughout Quest's story, so I hope you'll join me once more in the next part of this series where we go over chapters 3, 4, and 5. Thanks for watching.